Okay, we're back, and we're going to start the second half of this Monday night show. And again, Floyd, I thank you for that call. Raises a really good point, and probably raises another bunch of serious questions about the cost of medicine and things of that nature in this era that grossly overpriced, and that could be a backroom deal somewhere where these pharmacies, these pharmaceutical houses produce these test strips. Now, and you raise an interesting side note about test strips. These test strips are accurate within a very small range, usually within a blood sugar of around 90 to about 160 and 170. Once they get above that level, they definitely tends to be a tremendous divergence between the actual number and the actual number would be the gold standard for checking it when you did draw your blood and send it to the lab. They did it by chemical analysis. So so as the number goes higher, the divergence goes higher. They're meant to check your sugar within a very narrow range, and you need the controls and you need the other things. So it's a shame that you got to pay all that good money for something that really isn't that accurate outside of high ranges. So we'll welcome Ray back. Ray on the phone. How you doing?
Okay, Doc.
Good.
You raised a good point when you were saying about transporting prescriptions to the sheriff's office. It's not only if you have your own prescription and it's not in a bottle with your name on it, and they get you, they'll lock you up.
Yep.
Beat it eventually. You'll go through the court and beat it, but you'll be put through hell in the meantime. They may lock you up for 2 to 7 days because you don't have it in a bottle with your name on it. And another thing, if you've got a recent prescription that's just been filled and you leave most of them at home because in case you lose the bottle or whatever, you got it on you, they'll get you for trafficking or something like that because there's too many pills missing out of the bottle in a short period of time. And this is what's outrageous about this drug war, this supposed drug war. They get people on these technicalities, people that are doing nothing wrong, and they get them and they punish them and they teach them a lesson that you keep in line or you're going to go to the slammer. I've been watching for 14 years. It's outrageous.
Yep.
And people have to be aware of this. Even these 7-day deals where people put 7 days worth of scripts in so they don't forget them and they carry them on them. It's not their name is not on it. They can get in trouble too. So I just want people to know you got to be careful. The badges are out of control because they want to make the bust, and this is outrageous.
Yep.
You got a real good show tonight. Keep it going, guy.
Okay, thank you very much. And that's exactly true. And I don't know what's been going on here in the past few days in this town, but there have been an inordinate number of highway patrol and local law enforcement out pulling people over, starting, I guess, on Monday or whatever. They've been, or last week, they were just out tearing up the streets, pulling people over for various reasons. And so, this is where, you forget to signal, you don't, you have to give them some probable cause to pull you over. You're driving and going a few miles over the speed limit, forget to signal 100 feet before you turn, things of that nature, that gives them the right to pull you over. And of course, when people see that there's a police officer or a sheriff's department behind them, they get nervous, so they make a mistake, and then that tends to open the door for them. And, but it is important. I mean, you should be transporting very little of your medication with you, and it should have a pill bottle in there so that when you do transport them, you're not breaking the law in that respect. Now, I had one patient who basically said her prescriptions were stolen out of her house. She called the sheriff's department to file a police report because that was the only way we were going to refill them. And the officer, whoever on the phone, told him, I'll be happy to fill out a police report, but then I'm going to have to arrest you because you didn't take care of your medications or you did something along that line. So that pretty much put the kibosh on that. So This is very interesting, times that we're going through, and it's a struggle going on in the medical community with medications of this sort. 40 some odd thousand people last year died of prescription drug overdoses, and that's a real crime. That's a real shame. It does unfortunately happen, and that's one of the things that I use to promote the use of medical marijuana, which is that people, they don't overdose on marijuana. And they seem to be able to alleviate a lot of their symptoms, and they bypass the problems that we're having at the local pharmacies, where I believe the pharmacist, somebody in corporate, is acting as judge, jury, and executioner by making a decision for you and preempting you and putting up a block for you to get your medications and a roadblock to getting your care. And I think that's why the more that people complain about this, and I'm going to tell you, I don't know that it's so evident in Las Vegas, maybe because there's a Walgreens on every corner, but there's only three or four major pharmacies in this town for a town of 30,000 people. So this is a scenario where you have Smiths that will not take on any new customers at all for controlled medication. They simply will not do that. And do they have the right to do that as a business? I guess they do. They don't want their numbers come up. I actually got an email from someone in their corporate level who basically was citing the Walgreens and the Cardinal Pharmacy issue about the number of prescriptions, and some of the pharmacists there saying we don't want this pharmacy to get in trouble. And I mean, all the DEA wants you to do as a pharmacist is know your customer. That's all they say. Know your customer. What does that mean? That means, do you know them? I mean, do they do business with you frequently enough? Do they have other prescriptions that they fill? Is the doctor in town a legitimate doctor? Is the prescription a legitimate prescription? After that, they're done. They either fill the prescription or they don't fill the prescription. And I think they've decided that it's better that I turn the customer away by not having the product and to have that argument. This is how they're controlling what's going on in the community. And yet most of the people in Pahrump can't drive across town to another Walgreens, or you can't drive to get to another CVS. Well, you could, but it's going to cost you 60 miles and a treacherous highway. And most of these people are in their 70s or 80s and don't drive well. And Vegas is a quagmire. I mean, literally, it's an Indy 500 trying to negotiate just getting from one part to the other. And you're up here in Pahrump where traffic isn't great, but it's nothing like that. So, I mean, these people, and even if you go down to Walgreens or drive the 60 miles or 70 miles to fill your prescription, there's no guarantee they're going to do that either. And so we may be just so isolated geographically by a small number of pharmacies that have clamped down on everything. That's a problem. But then again, like I said, go to the state board. I mean, you just go on their website. They comes right up, and you just make your complaint right in a PDF file, and that's the end of it. And they are obligated to investigate it and get back to you. One of the things I've heard pharmacists talk about is that the DEA is limiting us. Now, if you get that as an answer, that's an out-and-out lie. I mean, that is an out-and-out lie. You call the DEA office, the diversion office locally, and you can ask them, and they'll tell you, no, we're not limiting what's going on. These are self-imposed controls limited by that. And as far as there's a shortage is concerned, our manufacturer, let me tell you, that's a bunch of hogwash too, because most of these medications are made in foreign countries. In fact, a talk that I was at not too long ago had a DEA agent there who was talking about a lot of the highways for medications to get into the United States. So what happens in these foreign countries, in India, especially Vicodin and Ritalin and all the other products, they're manufactured in these pharmacies. So what they do is they actually after the manufacturing plant closes at 5 o'clock, either through back doors or whatever, the security people people, they actually bring in another crew, unbeknownst to the regular business hours, and they'll run a manufacturing plant for, I don't know, 5-6 hours, producing the same product, packaged the same way, and shipping that out without a prescription, without any other issues. So this is how this online pharmacies were basically being able to supply hydrocodone and things of that nature. So no, there's no shortage of this medication. It's all made overseas. It's not even made here in the U.S. And so that's an out-and-out lie too. They can get whatever they want, whenever they want. They just don't want the eyes of the government snooping in. And I think the DEA has every right to question the numbers if they're going up. Why did your numbers go up 300%? And you should have known that there was a problem when all of a sudden you're dealing in 1,000 pills and now you're dealing in 3,000 pills. So anyway, I encourage you to complain, and then it becomes a public record. Once you make a complaint to the local pharmacy board, it becomes a public record, and a public record can be used in case somebody out there decides that they want to take legal action against the pharmacies, or you suffer some event as a result of not getting your medication, and you need a legal grounds to be able to take an action. Now, I'm not talking about frivolous lawsuits. I'm not talking about making up stuff. I'm talking about if you actually get hurt because a pharmacy was decided to not order your prescriptions because they're afraid of something, and the records would prove that, then you would have a documented complaint on file somewhere which would substantiate your claim against one of the big pharmaceutical companies and our pharmaceutical chains. So, and as soon as those things start happening, then I think it all changes to lighten up this chokehold that they placed on this community. And we as physicians are doing our job, and everybody's trying to do their job, but I just don't like the way they're limiting what we can do. And then what we have to do is we have to call the pharmacy. Well, okay, you don't have oxycodone. Do you have Dilaudid? Do you have this? Do you have that? And what quantities do you do? So I got to do a mathematical calculation to rechange your formula so that you can get your pain medication because they didn't get a run on this particular product this week. And it's just absolute insanity that's the way we have to practice medicine today. Anyway, we're going to go to break, and when we come back, we'll talk about a few more topics, and hopefully we'll get a caller. Thank you for tuning in.